Hi, I'm James Lauer. We're here today with Senator Judy Emmons and Anny Donewald. We're going to talk a little bit about human trafficking. Senator, could you please give us an overview of what human trafficking is? I don't think a lot of people really understand this issue, so if you could give a little bit of an overview to start us off.
Thanks, James, and you're right. There are many folks in Michigan and around the country that don't understand human trafficking. And they don't realize how prolific it has become, and that it very well could be right next door to them. It's an $87 million a day business, and that translates through every piece of the economy. It doesn't matter if it's a young person, an older person, it doesn't matter what ethnicity, it doesn't matter what location. It's urban, it's rural, it's all over the country, and definitely we know that it is in Michigan.
Great, thanks. And we have Anny Donewald with us today. And could you tell us a little bit about how you met Anny, how she's been involved with your office on these bills, and then she's going to talk a little bit about the armed campaign that she's working on.
Well, Anny's become a very good friend, and we're just grateful that she's willing to share her expertise with us. Anny and I met some time ago, actually, through mutual friends, and made a connection. And she knew that we were working on this particular issue, and what we wanted when we started work on this was a way to delve down into the whole industry and determine what really the needs are of individuals who are being trafficked and who are survivors. And Anny's been a great resource. She has helped us work into other areas of this issue and helped us connect with other folks. So appreciate her friendship and her expertise.
Thanks. Anny, could you tell us a little bit about the armed campaign that you've been working
on? The armed campaign essentially was birthed out of a conversation that I was having with Senator Emmons. We were looking at, the demographics of people that were coming out to her speaking engagements, and the communication kind of went, what are we missing? And I noticed that a lot of the speaking engagements about sex trafficking and the events that we were holding were lacking considerably men. It was all women because this is viewed as a women's issue. But in reality, it's not a women's issue, it's a human issue. And so she asked me, how can we solve this problem? How can we bridge the gap? And I said to her, I don't think that men are intentionally being apathetic. I think that they're just undereducated. So obviously there's the problem, therein lies the problem. And we got off the phone, and through, just reflecting on the conversation, I came up with the armed campaign, which is the Association of Real Men Ending the Demand. It's serving as an educational piece. It's serving as just a proactive piece to get men involved, to educate themselves, to educate other men, and to basically stand up and say, this is not tolerable. I stand against the selling of human beings for sex. And so,
So you're really trying to address the supply side of the problem. You want them to end the demand, is that my understanding?
That's a lofty goal, but, one person can do a lot. And, I get 100 people, I get 1,000 people, we get 10,000 people. Yeah, we can end the demand. I also have an organization called Eve's Angels that's working on the survivor side. And so from my aspect, we're trying to, bridge both sides and attack it from both angles.
Great, thanks. And Senator, I know some of your colleagues and you have been working on this campaign with Anny. Could you tell us a little about that, how they've been involved?
Well, as you're well aware, many of my colleagues are male. There are only 4 women in the Michigan Senate out of 38 individuals serving. And they have been very helpful. They have really taken it upon themselves to become educated on this issue. Many of them are involved in the legislation, but this particular piece, the armed campaign, drew their attention, and many of them have expressed an interest in this and expressed an interest in sharing this information with others in their circle of friends, their families, and they realize that men have to become involved. They realize that men have to carry the message, and especially to their sons and younger generations, that women are not for sale, it's disrespectful, it's degrading, and they take it very seriously. And we're just grateful that many of our colleagues in the Senate are willing to put their name on the line and say, we're not going to do this.
Anny, could you tell us a little bit more about how people can get involved with this campaign?
Mm-hmm. Since the onset of the armed campaign, when we rolled it out, we've been contacted from different groups all over the country asking how they can get involved with the armed campaign. And our whole goal is not only just to focus in on politicians and the politics in different states, but also to get the armed campaign moving and spread throughout different organizations, different religious organizations, different entertainment, people in entertainment, the people in sports arenas, just different places where law enforcement, different places where this can become the influence and this can become the new standard, rather than the standard being sexual exploitation and the ignorance of trafficking, which to me is the true epidemic.
So can I ask a question? So would you be interested, say, if in Michigan, let's say in Michigan you have the University of Michigan, Michigan State, Central Michigan, and Ferris State. I mean, a multitude of opportunities at the collegiate level. Would that be a place to?
That has to be a place, Senator, because we are having, again, it's an epidemic. Trafficking is an epidemic, and like I've said, the ignorance of trafficking is the bigger epidemic. And so to get as many people educated that are in places of affluence and influence helps girls and save girls all over the country and in the state of Michigan.
Great.
Great.
Senator, this sounds like it butts up nicely with the awareness that you've been doing, and I understand you had a couple of bills passed yesterday in the Senate that deal with this topic.
That we did, and 384 is really my favorite bill at this point, although they're all my favorites. But it really addresses an issue that very few people realize is an issue, and it addresses an issue that affects probably every survivor of trafficking, and it addresses the statute of limitations. And currently the law states that the statute of limitations runs out after a certain period of time to go after your perpetrators. And this piece of legislation eliminates the statute of limitations completely. We're calling it the Teresa Flores law. That is because Teresa Flores was a survivor, is a survivor. She is credentialed by the United States government as one of the very few experts on trafficking in America and around the world. And her story started right here in Michigan. And I think it's very important to recognize that it's a girl next door story. And it impacts her as well as her entire family. And once she recognized what it was that she went through, the statute of limitations had run out. She could no longer go after her perpetrators. So it's important, I think, for this particular piece of legislation to move and be signed into law. I think it's to the benefit of all of us.
That sounds like a really good piece of legislation. I understand we were talking a little bit off camera about a recent incident involving a spa in the Fenton area, and I think that goes to the question of, does this happen in Michigan? Could you explain that to us a little bit, maybe other experiences that you've come across?
So true, James, and it's becoming more prevalent. You'll see stories about it more frequently in the paper, on the internet, around Michigan. But ironically, as we were working on this legislation yesterday in the Senate and in the House of Representatives here in Michigan, there was a sting or something to that effect in Fenton, and they closed down a so-called massage parlor for trafficking, for prostitution. It remains to be seen what they'll be charged with, but it was in a trafficked area. It was in a high-profile area where people were doing business, and the authorities went in and closed it down yesterday. The other piece that's ironic to me is earlier in November, you think about a spa perhaps where people are being trafficked through labor and sexual trafficking. Earlier in November in Warren, Michigan, a mother was trying to traffic her own 4-year-old child. So trafficking takes on all kinds of faces.
Great. And I know you've done a lot of grassroots level research for these bills that you've been working on. How many miles have you put on your car this year?
Oh my goodness, James. That would be in the thousands of miles. We have been many places in Michigan and outside of Michigan. Other states that are working on this issue as well. I'm just grateful that they're willing to share their experiences, their successes, what didn't work so well, and we can draw on them as experts and counsel.
And some of those other states are actually starting to look to you for counsel on these issues too, because
indeed they are. We predict and we intend to be the state that has the most stringent laws addressing trafficking, and it's important that we send that message to the traffickers.
Great. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the process. Might not be as fun of a topic, but so what's the legislature's role in this? What's the governor's? And I know the Attorney General's been involved too, so what is his role in this too?
That's true. And of course, the legislature works on legislation. We run it through committees, we have it drafted, we take input specifically for this piece of legislation, these bills. We put in all kinds of hours with folks at the grassroots level, those people who have come from all around the state of Michigan as an advisory committee to us in our office regarding trafficking and their experiences, their personal experiences, their families' experiences. That is invaluable. And then we work it through the committee process. And ultimately, as happened yesterday, we managed to get it through the Senate, then it goes to the House. And ultimately, the governor, we are very hopeful and confident that he will sign this. And of course, the Attorney General has been working with us, with the state of Michigan. His focus, essentially as an Attorney General, is law enforcement investigation, and his task force has been working on this issue as well. He's taken a lead role in this, and we're grateful for that. But, you know, we as legislators are the ones who really can work the legislation through the process.
Okay, so my understanding, he focuses more on the investigation and the prosecution after the bills become law, so you're trying to give him some more tools to help with that.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
We want him to have the strongest and most ironclad tools available.
Well, that's good to hear. And going back to the legislative side, I know a lot of your colleagues have bought into this package. How many sponsors are on the bills?
Well, we started with 19 bills, and I believe altogether we have 14 primary sponsors. Now, in the legislature, you can be a primary sponsor in that you really have ownership in that bill, and then anyone else can co-sponsor as well. And my gosh, many, the majority have co-sponsored. So that's encouraging.
So Annie, how is this legislation and this process been affecting you and your organization and what you're trying to accomplish?
Again, not only do we have the Armed Campaign, but I have an organization called Eve's Angels. We're in 8 cities across the country. We set up support groups for women in the sex industry, and then we outreach into their places of employment wherever sex is sold. And so sex trafficking in my world is fairly common, and we're seeing, you know, a lot of it's becoming more obvious just because of the educational piece and as my teams get educated. But one of the biggest challenges is that, you know, again, piggybacking on what Senator said, is that a lot of times these girls don't realize that they are being trafficked. You know, they're also uneducated on what this buzzword is, this trafficking. And so, you know, with the statute of limitations being lifted, now we have an opportunity to, you know, when they do realize what's happened to them, there isn't a limit as to when that realization comes to fruition. Furthermore, if we can get their criminal record taken care of, now we have a better opportunity to serve these girls by helping them get integrated back into mainstream society. You know, if they can prove that they were trafficked. There's a lot of ways that these legislative laws, these things coming to pass, are going to help the girls, the survivors of sex trafficking and exploitation.
Great. And Senator, I know a question that comes up all the time is, what can I do to help? How can I get involved?
That is so true. And if you're interested in the legislative process, of course, know who your representative is, know who your senator is, and make contact with them, not only through letters, phone calls, but try to make personal contact with them and let them know how concerned you are about this and how you really believe that this needs to change to make a difference. And frankly, people on an everyday basis want to know how to recognize trafficking. They want to know how they can get involved with survivors. I will tell you, one of the most effective and the most gratifying for me personally last year, Teresa Flores sponsors a day where you go and you distribute soaps, little hotel soaps that have on the back of those soaps the Human Trafficking hotline, which is 888-3737-888. And on the back, the sticker says, "Are you here against your will? Do you believe that you are at risk? Please call this number." And those are distributed to hotels all around the state of Michigan at certain times of the year. It is going to happen again this year on January 11th. We will be in Southeast Michigan. It is a Saturday. It starts at 10 a.m. And we'll be glad to share the information of the location, You may call our office. It's 517-373-3760. And if you would like to be involved in that, or if you would like to be a part of that and bring a carload, a busload of folks who you take the soaps and they give you the area that you need to distribute them in, and you go as groups, and you go out and you make that contact with hotels, and it's very effective. There have been changed lives because these soaps have been distributed, and it's just one small thing. That's just one small thing, and if we all do one thing periodically and get our friends to do the same, not only will the legislation be effective, but all of our awareness as citizens.
Annie, the same question to you. How can people get involved with you and your organization?
Despite the beliefs of many people, and this is a huge myth that we're constantly coming against, no little girl wants to be a prostitute. You know, nobody dreams of this and aspires of this as a career. And so situations in life has taken them through a journey that they've been groomed and processed through, and to become, selling sex for a living. Again, I think that, the biggest thing that's lacking right now, and the number one thing that everyday people, that we need to get educated. We need to find out what sex trafficking looks like. There's a lot of myths. There's a lot of stereotypes about what it looks like, what it is for the girl, what she's going through. Education is such a big key. Read books. Again, Teresa Flores came out with an amazing book. I'm coming out.
Was that The Slave Across the Street?
It's The Slave Across the Street, and that's out right now. My book will be available in September of 2014. It's called Dancing for the Devil. And, just to find out, to get yourself more acclimated with what this really looks like, because we're dealing with modern day slavery.
Yeah, give us a little intro into that book. That sounds interesting. What's that going to be about?
It's my memoir, and it basically takes you through what it is to be somebody that goes through the sex industry and goes through sexual exploitation. I was never trafficked, but I was dealing and friends with girls that were trafficked on a regular basis before there even was a buzzword called trafficking. And so it takes you into that place, and it educates you on what that even looks like.
Great. Final thoughts, Senator Emmons?
Well, thank you, James. I'm just grateful that we're able to put this together today and help our viewers who are interested and maybe not so interested, but help educate and raise awareness. That is the number one issue right now, is raising awareness. The legislation is important, and we're not going to detract from that, and we're certainly not going to back away and slow down the momentum. But awareness is the key across the state and across the country, and this is just really, I'm so grateful you could be here, Annie, to tell the story, help enlighten all of us, and we're going to look forward to seeing your book on the shelves.
I can't wait.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both.